A man with a painful past finally opens his heart to new love after losing his wife, but not for the reasons you think. A young man sits in a rainy evening cafe, holding a painful secret for years. When the young woman across from him asks why he's still single, he falls silent, not because he doesn't want to love, but because he's afraid. Afraid that loving someone will betray the little girl sleeping at home. But the truth he's about to face is far more painful than that. Follow this story to the end, hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The rain had started around 6 and hadn't let up since. It drummed steadily against the windows of the Westwood Cafe, a small corner place with chipped wooden tables and mismatched chairs that had somehow survived 3 ownership changes in the past decade. Daniel Reeves sat near the back, nursing a cup of black coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. He didn't mind. He wasn't really there for the coffee. He was there because this was the only hour in his day that belonged to him. Across from him, Ava Collins sat with her hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, her fingers tapping a soft rhythm against the porcelain. She had ordered tea, chamomile, she'd said, because caffeine after 7 made her jittery. Daniel had smiled at that, a brief flicker of amusement that came and went before she could catch it. "You always do that," Ava said, tilting her head. "Do what?" "Smile like you're not supposed to." Daniel looked down at his coffee. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." She leaned back in her chair, studying him with that quiet intensity she always had. It wasn't intrusive exactly, but it made him feel transparent in a way he wasn't used to. "You know, I've been coming here for 3 months now, and I still don't really know anything about you." "There's not much to know." "I don't believe that." Daniel glanced up at her. Ava was 26, with dark hair that she usually tied back in a loose ponytail, and a face that always seemed to be halfway between serious and amused. She worked at the bookstore 2 blocks over, and she had a habit of showing up at the cafe around the same time he did, which he'd initially thought was coincidence until she admitted one night that it wasn't. "I like talking to you," she'd said simply, as if that explained everything. And maybe it did. "You're a single dad," Ava continued, counting on her fingers. "You work in IT support for some company whose name you've never actually told me. You drink your coffee black, you don't like crowds, and you've got a daughter who's, what, 4? 5. 5. And her name is Emma. You've been paying attention." "Of course I have." Ava's voice softened. "But that's all surface stuff, Daniel. I don't know why you're here every night. I don't know why a guy like you is sitting alone in a cafe when you could be, I don't know, living." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "I am living." "Are you?" The question hung in the air between them, heavier than it should have been. Daniel looked away toward the rain-streaked window. Outside, the street was nearly empty. A few cars passed, their headlights cutting through the downpour. He could see his reflection faintly in the glass. Tired eyes, shoulders that carried more weight than they used to. "Emma's asleep by 7:30 most nights," he said finally. "I've got a neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. She sits in my living room and knits while I'm gone. I'm back by 9. It's not complicated." "That's not what I asked." Daniel exhaled slowly. "What do you want me to say, Ava?" "I want you to tell me why you look like you're carrying the world on your back." He didn't answer right away. The truth was, he didn't know how to answer. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't want to say it out loud. Saying it out loud made it real, made it permanent. "You don't have to tell me," Ava added quietly. "But I think you want to." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. It was getting too long. Emma had told him that yesterday morning, tugging at a strand while she sat on the bathroom counter watching him shave. "Daddy, you look like a lion," she'd said, giggling. He'd promised her he'd get a haircut. He probably wouldn't. "I was married," Daniel said. Ava didn't react, she just waited. "Not legally. We were going to, but we never got around to it." He paused, his jaw tightening. "Her name was Claire." "Was?" "She died." The words came out flat, emotionless. He'd said them enough times that they didn't hurt the way they used to. Or maybe they did, and he'd just gotten better at not showing it. "I'm sorry," Ava said. "It was 6 years ago." "That doesn't make it easier." Daniel looked at her. There was no pity in her eyes, which he appreciated. Pity was the worst part. People heard the story, and their faces would shift, softening into something that made him feel like a wounded animal. Ava didn't do that. She just looked at him like he was a person who'd been through something hard, which was closer to the truth. How did it happen? Ava asked. Daniel hesitated. He didn't talk about this. Not with anyone, not even with Mrs. Callahan, who had known Claire and had held Emma in the hospital the day she was born. Not with his brother, who called once a month and asked careful, surface-level questions that never went deeper than they had to. But something about Ava made him want to talk. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the late hour. Maybe it was just that he was tired of carrying it alone. She had a pulmonary embolism, he said, 3 weeks after Emma was born. Ava's hand tightened around her mug. We didn't know, Daniel continued. She'd been tired, but we thought that was normal. New baby, no sleep, all that. She was breastfeeding, so she was up every 2 hours. I was trying to help, but I didn't know what I was doing. Neither of us did. He stopped, the memory pressing down on him like a weight. He could still see Claire sitting in the rocking chair in their bedroom, Emma cradled against her chest, her eyes half closed with exhaustion. He'd offered to take the baby, to give her a break, but she'd shaken her head. I've got her, she'd said. Go get some sleep. She collapsed in the bathroom, Daniel said. I heard the noise. By the time I got there, she wasn't breathing. Ava was very still. I called 911. I did CPR. I did everything they told me to do, but it didn't matter. His voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat. She was gone before the ambulance even got there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe was quiet except for the low hum of conversation from a couple near the front and the hiss of the espresso machine behind the counter. And you've been raising Emma alone ever since, Ava said. Yeah. That's not easy. No. Daniel looked down at his hands. They were calloused, rough, from years of fixing things and holding things and trying to keep things from falling apart. But it's what I have to do. Do you have family? Anyone who helps? My brother lives in Denver. We talk, but he's got his own life. Claire's parents tried to help at first, but it was too hard for them. Seeing Emma, she looks so much like Claire. After a while, they stopped coming around. That must have been lonely. It was. Daniel paused. It still is. Ava reached across the table and touched his hand. It was a small gesture, tentative, but it sent a jolt through him. He almost pulled away, but he didn't. You're a good father, she said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Daniel shook his head. You don't know what it's like. Every day, I wake up and I feel like I'm failing her. I work from home so I can be there when she needs me, but that means I'm always distracted. She talks to me and I'm half listening because I'm on a call or fixing a server issue or trying to figure out how to pay for her preschool. I make her breakfast and it's the same thing every morning because I don't have time to be creative. I put her to bed and I read her the same 3 books because those are the only ones she'll sit still for. And I know that I'm not enough. But we'll try to. Daniel, she deserves more than this. His voice was rough now, edged with something he didn't want to name. She deserves a mom. She deserves a family. She deserves someone who isn't just trying to survive every single day. She has you, Ava said firmly. And that's not nothing. Daniel pulled his hand away. You don't get it. Then help me get it. He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. A few people glanced over, but he didn't care. He needed air. He needed space. He needed to not be having this conversation. I should go, he said. Daniel, wait. But he was already moving toward the door, pulling his jacket off the back of the chair and shoving his arms through the sleeves. The rain hit him the second he stepped outside, cold and sharp, but he didn't slow down. He walked quickly, his hands jammed into his pockets, his head down. He didn't hear Ava follow him until she called his name. Daniel, stop! He stopped. He didn't turn around. She came up beside him, her hair already soaked, water dripping down her face. You don't get to do that. Do what? Run away. I'm not running. Yes, you are. She stepped in front of him, forcing him to look at her. You're running because I'm getting too close. Because you don't want me to see how much you're hurting. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. Her voice was steady, unflinching. I know you're terrified. I know you think that if you let anyone in, you're going to lose them. I know you've built your whole life around making sure Emma is safe, and you think that means you have to do it alone. Daniel's throat tightened. I can't. You can't what? I can't lose someone again. The words came out broken, raw. He hated how they sounded, hated how weak they made him feel. Ava's expression softened. So you're just going to spend the rest of your life hiding? I'm not hiding. I'm protecting her. From what? From me screwing up, from me choosing wrong, from me being selfish. Loving someone isn't selfish, Daniel. It is if it takes away from her. Ava shook her head slowly. You really believe that, don't you? Yes. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, What if you're wrong? Daniel didn't answer. What if letting someone in doesn't take anything away from Emma? Ava continued. What if it gives her more? That's not how it works. Why not? Because, he stopped, the words catching in his throat, because he didn't have an answer, not one that made sense, not one that didn't sound like an excuse. Ava stepped closer. You're a good man, Daniel. You're a good father. But you're so busy trying to be everything for Emma that you've forgotten you're allowed to be human. I don't have time to be human. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through his jacket, but Daniel couldn't move. He just stood there, staring at Ava, feeling something inside him crack open. I don't know how to do this, he said quietly. Do what? Let someone in. Ava smiled, small and sad. You start by not running away. That's it. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain taper off into a soft drizzle. Down the hall, Emma was asleep, her breathing steady and even. He'd checked on her twice already, just to make sure she was okay. She always was. She slept like nothing in the world could touch her, curled up under her unicorn blanket with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. He envied her that. The ability to feel safe. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he picked it up. A text from Ava. I'm sorry if I pushed too hard tonight. Daniel stared at the message for a long time before typing back. You didn't. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Can we talk tomorrow? Yeah. He set the phone down and closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. His mind kept circling back to what Ava had said. What if letting someone in doesn't take anything away from Emma? What if it gives her more? He wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe that he could have something for himself without it costing Emma. But every time he tried to picture it, tried to imagine what a life with someone else in it might look like, his mind hit a wall. Because the truth was, he wasn't afraid of losing someone again. He was afraid of failing Emma if he tried. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of Emma singing in her room. It was some song she'd learned at preschool, off-key and enthusiastic, and it made him smile despite the exhaustion weighing him down. He got up, pulled on a pair of sweatpants, and padded down the hall. Emma was sitting on her bed, surrounded by a pile of stuffed animals she'd arranged in a circle. She looked up when he came in, her face lighting up. Daddy, you're awake! I am. He sat down on the edge of her bed. What are you doing? Having a meeting. A meeting? Yeah, Mr. Rabbit is the boss. She held up the stuffed rabbit, making it nod. He says everyone has to share their feelings. Daniel couldn't help but laugh. That sounds like a good meeting. Do you want to join? Maybe later. Right now we need to get you some breakfast. Emma's face fell slightly, but she nodded. She gathered up Mr. Rabbit and followed him to the kitchen, chattering the whole way about what the other stuffed animals had said in the meeting. Daniel half listened, his mind still stuck on last night. He made Emma her usual breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, cut into triangles because she refused to eat them any other way. She sat at the table swinging her legs, Mr. Rabbit propped up beside her plate. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart? Why do you look sad? Daniel froze, the spatula still in his hand. I'm not sad. Yes, you are. Your eyes are sad. He turned to look at her. Emma was watching him with that unsettling perceptiveness that 5-year-olds sometimes had, the kind that made you wonder if they could see straight through you. I'm just tired, he said. You're always tired. Well, that's what happens when you're a grown-up. Emma frowned. I don't want to be a grown-up. Smart kid. He brought her plate over and set it down in front of her. She picked up a triangle of toast and nibbled at the corner, still watching him. Daddy? Do you have any friends? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? Like people you talk to, like how I talked to Mia and Jacob at school. Daniel sat down across from her. I have some friends. Like who? Well, there's Uncle Ryan. He lives far away. Yeah, but we still talk. On the phone doesn't count. Emma took another bite of toast. I mean real friends. Like people you see. Daniel thought about it. Who did he see regularly? Mrs. Callahan. But she was more of a babysitter than a friend. His coworkers, but those interactions were all through Slack and Zoom. Ava. There's someone I talk to sometimes, he said carefully. At the cafe. Emma's eyes lit up. A friend? I guess so. What's their name? Ava. Is she nice? Yeah, she's nice. Can I meet her? Daniel hesitated. He hadn't thought about that. Hadn't thought about what it would mean to bring Ava into this part of his life. The cafe was separate, safe. A place where he could be just Daniel, not Daniel the single dad, not Daniel who was barely holding it together. Maybe, he said. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She finished her breakfast and ran off to play, leaving Daniel alone in the kitchen with his thoughts. He texted Ava later that morning. Can we meet today? Her reply came almost immediately. Yes. Same place? Actually, I was thinking we could walk. There's a park near my place. Okay. What time? 2? I'll be there. Daniel spent the next few hours trying to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting. He had 3 tickets to close and a server migration to oversee, but every time he opened his laptop, he found himself staring at the screen without really seeing it. At 1:30, he got Emma ready. She insisted on wearing her favorite dress, a purple thing with sparkles that she'd picked out herself at Target, and her light-up sneakers. He didn't argue. Pick your battles, that's what the parenting book said. They walked the 4 blocks to Riverside Park, Emma skipping ahead and pointing out every dog they passed. The park was busy for a weekday afternoon. Mothers with strollers, older couples on benches, a group of teenagers playing basketball on the far court. Ava was waiting near the entrance, sitting on a bench with a book in her lap. She looked up when she saw them, and her face broke into a smile. You must be Emma, she said. Emma stopped mid-skip and looked up at her shyly. Hi, I've heard a lot about you. Really? Really? Your dad talks about you all the time. Emma glanced back at Daniel, her expression somewhere between pleased and embarrassed. He does? He does. Ava stood up, tucking her book into her bag. Do you want to go to the playground? Emma's shyness evaporated instantly. Yes. They walked over to the playground together, Emma running ahead to claim a swing. Ava and Daniel followed at a slower pace, side by side, but not quite close enough to touch. Thanks for coming, Daniel said. Of course. Ava glanced at him. I wasn't sure you'd actually text me. I wasn't sure either. What changed your mind? Emma asked me if I had any friends. Ava smiled. And what did you tell her? I said I had you. Am I your friend, Daniel? He looked at her, at the way the sunlight caught in her hair, at the openness in her face. I think so. Good. She didn't push for more than that, which he appreciated. They sat on a bench near the swings and watched Emma play. She was fearless on the equipment, climbing to the top of the jungle gym and sliding down the tallest slide without hesitation. Daniel's heart clenched every time she did something that looked even remotely dangerous, but he forced himself not to hover. She's amazing, Ava said. Yeah, she is. She looks like you. She looks like her mom. Ava didn't say anything for a moment, then quietly, Tell me about her. Daniel leaned back against the bench. Claire was... He paused, trying to find the right words. She was the kind of person who made things better just by being in the room. She was funny. She could make me laugh even when I was pissed off about something. She was terrible at cooking, but she tried anyway. She used to burn toast and then scrape off the black parts and act like it was fine. Ava smiled. Sounds like she was stubborn. Very. How did you meet? College. We had a literature class together. She hated the professor, said he was pretentious, and she used to pass me notes during lectures making fun of him. I thought she was going to get us both kicked out. But she didn't. No, We got an A. They were quiet for a moment, watching Emma. She had found another little girl on the playground, and they were playing some kind of game that involved a lot of running and shrieking. Do you still miss her? Ava asked. Every day. That's not going to go away, you know. I know. But it doesn't mean you can't move forward. Daniel looked at her. Is that what you think I should do? I think you should do whatever feels right, but I also think you've been standing still for a long time. Maybe I like standing still. Do you? He didn't answer. Emma came running over, breathless and flushed. Daddy, did you see me? I went down the big slide. I saw. You were very brave. Can we get ice cream? Daniel glanced at his watch. It's almost dinner time. Please? Emma? I'll have her home by 6, Ava said. She looked at Emma. How does that sound? Ice cream, and then I'll walk you back? Emma's eyes went wide. Really? If your dad says it's okay. Emma turned to Daniel with the full force of her 5-year-old pleading face. Please, Daddy? Daniel felt something in his chest loosen. Maybe it was the way Emma was looking at Ava, like she was already someone safe. Maybe it was the way Ava was looking at him, like she wasn't asking for anything he couldn't give. Okay, he said, but just this once. Emma squealed and hugged his leg, then grabbed Ava's hand and started pulling her toward the park exit. Ava looked back at Daniel, a question in her eyes. Are you coming? She asked. And Daniel, who had spent 6 years keeping everyone at arm's length, who had built his whole life around not needing anyone, found himself saying, Yeah, I'm coming. Geek. The ice cream shop was a small place called Sweet Breeze, wedged between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. Emma ordered a cone with rainbow sprinkles, and Ava got chocolate. Daniel didn't get anything, but Emma insisted on sharing hers with him anyway. They sat at a table near the window, Emma chattering about her new friend at the playground and how they were going to be best friends forever. Ava listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at all the right moments. Daniel watched them, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. This was what it could be like, he realized. This ease, this normalcy. Daddy, you're doing it again, Emma said. Doing what? Looking sad. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Then why aren't you smiling? Ava caught his eye across the table, and he saw the faintest trace of amusement there. I'm smiling on the inside, but, he said. Emma giggled. That's silly. You're silly. No, you're silly. It turned into a back and forth that lasted until Emma's ice cream was gone and her hands were sticky with melted sugar. Ava helped her wash up in the bathroom, and when they came back out, Emma was holding Ava's hand again. They walked back to Daniel's apartment slowly, taking the long way through the residential streets. Emma skipped between them, sometimes holding both their hands and making them swing her up into the air. Again, she'd shout, and they'd do it again. By the time they reached Daniel's building, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma was getting tired, her steps dragging, and Daniel scooped her up without thinking. She rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes already half closed. She's exhausted, Ava said softly. Yeah. She always crashes after the playground. They stood there for a moment, just outside the building's entrance. Daniel could feel the weight of Emma in his arms, warm and solid and safe. Thank you, he said, for today. You don't have to thank me. I do. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Ava looked at him, her expression serious. I like spending time with you, Daniel. And I like Emma. I'm not here because I feel sorry for you or because I think you need saving. I'm here because I want to be. Daniel's throat tightened. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it. Just don't push me away, okay? He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Ava reached out and touched his arm, just briefly. I'll see you tomorrow? Yeah. She smiled, and then she turned and walked away, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. Daniel watched her go until she turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Then he carried Emma inside and up the stairs to their apartment. Mrs. Callahan was in the living room, her knitting needles clicking softly. How was your afternoon? She asked. Good, Daniel said. Really good. He took Emma to her room and laid her down on her bed. She was already asleep, her breathing deep and even. He pulled the blanket over her and kissed her forehead. I love love you, sweetheart," he whispered. And then he went to his own room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. For the first time in 6 years, he felt something other than fear when he thought about the future. He felt hope. Over the next few weeks, Ava became a constant presence in their lives. She showed up at the park on weekends, helped Daniel grocery shop when Emma was at preschool, came over for dinner on Tuesday nights. It wasn't planned. It just happened, the way good things sometimes do when you stop fighting them. Emma adored her. She would run to the door when Ava knocked, throwing her arms around Ava's legs and demanding to know what they were going to do today. And Ava never showed up empty-handed. Sometimes it was a book, sometimes a small toy, sometimes just a new story she'd heard at work. Daniel found himself looking forward to seeing her. Not in the nervous, uncertain way he'd felt at the beginning, but in a way that felt solid, real. They didn't talk about what they were. They didn't need to. It was enough just to be. One night, after Emma had gone to bed, Ava and Daniel sat on the couch with a bottle of wine between them. The TV was on, some cooking show neither of them was really watching. "Can I ask you something?" Ava said. "Sure." "What are you afraid of?" Daniel took a sip of wine. "That's a big question." "I know." He thought about it, really thought about it. "I'm afraid that if I let myself be happy, something will take it away. I'm afraid that if I focus on anything other than Emma, I'll miss something important. I'm afraid that I'm not enough. Not for her, not for you, not for anyone." Ava set her glass down and turned to face him. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've been enough this whole time. You just haven't let yourself believe it." "It's not that simple." "Maybe it is." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, at the way she was sitting with her legs tucked under her, at the way her eyes never wavered from his, at the way she made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry everything alone. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Do what?" "Be with someone, trust someone, let someone in." "You're already doing it, Daniel." "Am I?" "Yeah," she smiled. "You just don't realize it yet." And maybe she was right. Maybe he'd been letting her in all along, one small moment at a time. Maybe that was how love worked. Not in grand gestures or declarations, but in the quiet accumulation of days, in shared ice cream and park visits and Tuesday night dinners, in the way Emma laughed when Ava was around, and the way Daniel felt a little less alone. He reached out and took Ava's hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I know, but I don't want to be scared anymore." "Then don't be." It sounded so simple when she said it, like fear was just something you could decide not to feel. But maybe, Daniel thought, it was. Maybe it started with a choice, and then another choice, and then another, until one day you looked around and realized you'd built something new without even noticing. He squeezed Ava's hand and she squeezed back. Outside, the city hummed with life. Cars passed on the street below, voices drifted up from the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. But inside the apartment, everything was still. Emma was asleep down the hall, safe and dreaming. And for the first time in 6 years, Daniel felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. And that was enough. 3 months passed like that, quiet, steady, unremarkable in the best possible way. Daniel stopped measuring time in units of survival and started noticing other things. The way Emma's vocabulary was exploding, how she'd started using words like actually and apparently in sentences that made him laugh. The way Ava had memorized his coffee order and brought him a cup every Thursday morning before her shift at the bookstore. The way his apartment didn't feel quite so empty anymore. But underneath it all, there was still a current of something Daniel couldn't name. Not fear, exactly. More like waiting, like he was holding his breath for the moment when it all fell apart. It was a Saturday morning when things started to shift. Daniel was making pancakes, an ambitious departure from his usual scrambled eggs routine, when Emma wandered into the kitchen with Mr. Rabbit tucked under her arm. "Is Ava coming over today?" she asked. "I think so, later this afternoon." "Can she stay for dinner?" "We'll see." Emma climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs and propped Mr. Rabbit against the salt shaker. "I like it when she's here." "Yeah?" "Yeah, the apartment is more fun." Daniel flipped a pancake, watching the bubbles form on the surface. "What do you mean?" You laugh more. And we do more stuff, like yesterday when she taught me how to make friendship bracelets. You made me one of those, Daniel said, glancing at the colorful string tied around his wrist. Emma had insisted he wear it, and he hadn't taken it off since. I'm making one for Ava too. A better one. Why better? Emma shrugged. Because she's special. The simplicity of it hit Daniel harder than it should have. Because she's special. There was no complexity in the way Emma saw the world, no second-guessing or fear. She just knew what she felt and said it out loud. Yeah, Daniel said quietly. She is. His phone buzzed on the counter, a text from his brother Ryan. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Daniel stared at the message for a moment before typing back. Yeah, good, actually. Good how? Daniel hesitated. He hadn't told Ryan about Ava. Hadn't told anyone, really, except Mrs. Callahan, who had figured it out on her own and given him an approving nod one evening when Ava had stopped by. Just good. I'll call you later. You better. He set the phone down and focused on the pancakes, which were starting to look more like abstract art than breakfast food. Emma didn't seem to care. She drowned them in syrup and ate every bite, syrup dripping down her chin. After breakfast, they went to the farmer's market, something Ava had suggested a few weeks ago. Emma loved it, running between the stalls and pointing at everything from fresh flowers to homemade dog treats. Daniel bought vegetables he wasn't entirely sure how to cook, and a loaf of bread that cost more than it probably should have. They were walking back, Emma holding a small bouquet of sunflowers she'd insisted on buying for Ava, when Daniel saw him. A man standing outside a coffee shop, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that looked familiar in a way that made Daniel's stomach drop. It took him a second to place it. Marcus, Claire's younger brother. They hadn't spoken in over 4 years. Not since the funeral, when Marcus had stood in the church parking lot and told Daniel that it should have been him who died, not Claire. That if Daniel had been paying attention, if he'd noticed the signs, if he'd done something, anything, she'd still be alive. Daniel had taken it because what else was he supposed to do? Marcus was grieving. They all were. But after that, Marcus had disappeared. No calls, no visits, no acknowledgement that Emma even existed. Now he was standing there 20 feet away, staring directly at Daniel. Daddy? Emma tugged at his hand. Why did we stop? Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat had closed up, his pulse hammering in his ears. Marcus started walking toward them. Daniel. Marcus. They stood there, facing each other like two people who'd forgotten how to be in the same space. Marcus looked older, harder. His jaw was set, his eyes shadowed in a way that made Daniel think he hadn't been sleeping well. It's been a while, Marcus said. Yeah. Marcus's gaze dropped to Emma, and something in his expression cracked. Is this? Emma. Yeah. Emma was looking up at Marcus with open curiosity. Who are you? I'm your uncle. I have an uncle? You have two, Daniel said quickly. Uncle Ryan and Uncle Marcus. How come I've never met you? Emma asked, with the kind of bluntness only a 5-year-old could get away with. Marcus's face tightened. I've been away. Where? Just away. Daniel could feel the tension radiating off Marcus like heat. He glanced down at Emma, who was still holding her sunflowers, oblivious to the weight of the moment. We should go, Daniel said. Wait. Marcus's voice was rough. Can we talk? I don't think that's a good idea. Please. Daniel looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something he wasn't expecting. Not anger, not blame, just exhaustion. Emma, why don't you go sit on that bench over there? Daniel said, pointing to a spot about 15 feet away. I'll be right here, okay? Okay. Emma skipped over to the bench, humming to herself. Daniel turned back to Marcus. What do you want? I'm sorry. The words came out flat, like Marcus had been practicing them and still couldn't get them right. For what? Daniel asked, though he knew. For what I said. After the funeral, I was... Marcus stopped, his jaw working. I was messed up. I blamed you because I didn't know who else to blame. You blamed me because it was easier than blaming her. Don't. It's the truth, isn't it? Claire made her own choices. She didn't go to the doctor when she should have. She pushed herself too hard. Stop. Marcus's voice was sharp. Don't talk about her like that. Like what? Like she was human? Like she made mistakes? She's dead, Daniel. You don't get to shh. I don't get to what? Remember her as she actually was? You think I've spent the last 6 years pretending she was perfect? She wasn't. She was stubborn and reckless, and she didn't listen when people told her to slow down. And I loved her anyway. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stand here and let you rewrite history. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. I didn't come here to fight. Then why did you come? Because I saw you, and I saw her. He glanced toward Emma, who was now picking at the petals of one of the sunflowers. And I realized I've been an asshole. Daniel let out a breath. Yeah, you have. I know. They stood there in silence for a moment, the noise of the street filling the space between them. She looks like Claire, Marcus said quietly. Everyone says that. Does she know about her? I tell her stories, show her pictures, but she doesn't really understand. She was too young. Marcus nodded, his throat working. I should have been there, for both of you. Yeah, you should have. Can I? Marcus hesitated. Can I see her, just for a minute? Daniel wanted to say no, wanted to tell Marcus that he'd lost the right to be part of Emma's life when he'd walked away. But he looked at Marcus's face and saw the same thing he'd seen in the mirror 6 years ago. Grief, loss, the desperate need for something to hold on to. 1 minute, Daniel said. They walked over to the bench together. Emma looked up, her face brightening. Are you done talking? Yeah, sweetheart. This is your Uncle Marcus. He wanted to say hi. Marcus crouched down so he was at Emma's eye level. His hands were shaking slightly. Hi, Emma. Hi. She tilted her head. You look sad. I am a little sad. Why? Because I haven't seen you in a long time. Oh. Emma thought about that for a second. You can come visit if you want. We have pancakes on Saturdays. Marcus's face did something complicated. I'd like that. Okay, bye. Emma waved cheerfully and went back to her sunflowers. Marcus stood up slowly, wiping at his eyes. Thank you. Daniel didn't say anything. I know I don't deserve it, Marcus continued, but if you'd let me, if I could be part of her life, I need to think about it. I understand. Daniel pulled out his phone and handed it to Marcus. Put your number in, I'll call you. Marcus took the phone with hands that were still shaking and typed in his contact information. When he handed it back, his eyes were red. I mean it, Daniel. I'm sorry. I know. Marcus nodded once, then turned and walked away. Daniel watched him go, feeling like he'd just survived something he hadn't been prepared for. Daddy? Emma was standing next to him now, tugging at his sleeve. Can we go home? I want to give Ava her flowers. Yeah, sweetheart, let's go home. They walked back to the apartment in silence, Emma chattering about the farmer's market while Daniel's mind spun. He hadn't thought about Marcus in years, hadn't let himself think about him, because thinking about Marcus meant thinking about that day in the parking lot, and that was a door he'd nailed shut. But now it was open, and he didn't know what to do with it. When they got home, Mrs. Callahan was waiting in the hallway. There was a woman here looking for you, she said. Said her name was Ava. I told her you'd be back soon. She left? No, she went to the cafe, said she'd wait there. Daniel felt a pang of guilt. He'd forgotten to text her that they'd be late. Can you watch Emma for a bit? He asked Mrs. Callahan. Of course. He crouched down in front of Emma. I need to go talk to Ava. I'll be back in a little while, okay? Can I come? Not this time, sweetheart. Emma's face fell. But I want to give her the flowers. You can give them to her when I get back. I promise. Promise, promise? Promise, promise. Emma seemed satisfied with that. She hugged him tight, then ran inside with Mrs. Callahan. Daniel walked the 4 blocks to the cafe, his mind still churning. When he pushed through the door, he saw Ava immediately. She was sitting at their usual table, a book open in front of her, but she wasn't reading. She was staring out the window. Hey, he said. She looked up and her face shifted into something between relief and concern. Hey, I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me. Never. He sat down across from her. Sorry, we ran into someone at the market. It threw me off. Who? Claire's brother. Ava closed her book slowly. I didn't know she had a brother. Yeah, Marcus. We haven't spoken since the funeral. That must have been hard. It was weird. He apologized, said he wanted to be part of Emma's life. What did you say? That I'd think about it. Ava reached across the table and took his hand. How are you feeling? I don't know. Confused, I guess. I spent so long being angry at him, and now he shows up and suddenly I'm supposed to just… What? Forgive him? You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I know, but Emma deserves to know her family, and Marcus is family, whether I like it or not. Do you like it? Daniel thought about that. I don't know. Maybe. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell, but another part of me remembers what he was like before Claire died. He was a good guy. He loved her, and losing her broke something in him. It broke something in you too. Yeah, but I had Emma. He didn't have anyone. Ava was quiet for a moment, her thumb tracing circles on the back of his hand. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. That's okay. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Daniel looked at her, at the calm certainty in her face, the way she never pushed him to be anything other than what he was, and felt something shift in his chest. I don't know what I did to deserve you, he said. Ava smiled. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to let me in. I'm still not very good at that. You're better than you think. He squeezed her hand. Emma made you flowers, sunflowers. She's very excited to give them to you. I can't wait. They sat there for a while, not saying much, just being together. The cafe was busy around them, people coming and going, the espresso machine hissing, conversations overlapping, but it all felt distant, like they were in their own little bubble. Eventually, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Callahan. Emma wants to know if Ava is coming for dinner. He showed the message to Ava. What do you think? I think I'd love to. They walked back to the apartment together, hands linked. When they got there, Emma was waiting at the door, the sunflowers clutched in both hands. Ava, these are for you. They're beautiful, Emma. Thank you. Emma beamed. I picked them myself. I can tell. They're perfect. Daniel watched them together. Emma pulling Ava inside, chattering about her day. Ava listening with the kind of attention that made Emma feel like the most important person in the world, and felt that shift in his chest again. Stronger this time. This was what he'd been afraid of. This feeling, this connection. But standing there, watching the two people he cared about most in the world, he realized something. He wasn't afraid anymore. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Emma insisted on helping cook, which meant there was flour everywhere and the pasta was slightly overcooked, but nobody minded. They ate at the small kitchen table, Emma sitting between Daniel and Ava, telling a story about a boy at preschool who had eaten a crayon. A whole crayon? Ava asked, mock horrified. A whole crayon! And then he cried because his tongue turned blue. Daniel laughed. That sounds about right. After dinner, Ava helped Emma get ready for bed while Daniel cleaned up the kitchen. He could hear them down the hall, Ava reading one of Emma's favorite books in funny voices, Emma giggling uncontrollably. When Ava came back out, she was smiling. She wants you to come say goodnight. Daniel went to Emma's room and found her already half asleep, Mr. Rabbit tucked under her chin. Good night, sweetheart, he whispered, kissing her forehead. Love you, Daddy. Love you too. He turned off the light and closed the door most of the way, leaving it open just a crack. When he came back to the living room, Ava was sitting on the couch, her shoes off, her legs tucked under her. She's amazing, Ava said. Yeah, she is. Daniel sat down next to her, closer than he usually did, close enough that their shoulders touched. Can I tell you something? He asked. Always. I think I'm falling in love with you. The words came out quieter than he'd intended, but they were there, real, irreversible. Ava turned to look at him, her eyes wide. You think? No, I know. I'm falling in love with you, and it scares the hell out of me. Why? Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone's partner and Emma's dad at the same time. I don't know how to let you in without feeling like I'm taking something away from her. Ava reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. You're not taking anything away from her, Daniel. You're giving her more. How do you know? Because I see the way she looks at you when I'm around. She's happy. Happier than she's ever been, I bet. She's 5. She doesn't know. She knows more than you think. Ava's voice was gentle but firm. Kids aren't stupid. They can feel when the people around them are happy, and you've been happier these last few months. I can see it. She can see it. Daniel closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I don't want to screw this up. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She leaned in and kissed him, soft and brief. Because you care too much to screw it up. When she pulled back, Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. At the way her hair fell across her shoulders, at the small scar above her left eyebrow, at the way her eyes held his without wavering. I love you, he said. Not I'm falling, not I think, just the truth. Ava smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything else disappear. I love you too. They sat there for a long time, not saying anything, just being. Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Not just hope, not just possibility. Peace. But peace, he was learning, was a fragile thing. The next morning, Daniel woke to his phone ringing. He fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Marcus. He almost didn't answer, but something made him hit the green button. Hello? Daniel, it's Marcus. I'm sorry for calling so early. Daniel glanced at the clock. 7:30. Not that early, but still. It's fine. What's up? I've been thinking about yesterday, about Emma, and Marcus paused. I want to be part of her life, if you'll let me. Daniel sat up, running a hand through his hair. Marcus, I know I don't deserve it. I know I walked away when I should have stayed, but I'm asking you to give me a chance, please. Daniel closed his eyes. This isn't just about you and me, it's about Emma, and I'm not going to let anyone into her life who isn't going to stick around. I'll stick around. I promise. You promised to be there before, at the funeral. You said we'd get through it together, and then you disappeared. I know. And I'm sorry, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Daniel wanted to believe him. Part of him even did, but another part, the part that had spent 6 years protecting Emma from anything that might hurt her, wasn't ready to take that risk. I need time, Daniel said. How much time? I don't know, just time. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll wait. Thank you. After he hung up, Daniel sat there in bed, staring at the wall. He didn't know what the right answer was. Didn't know if letting Marcus back in was the best thing for Emma or the worst. All he knew was that his carefully constructed world, the one where it was just him and Emma against everything, was starting to crack open. And he wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a terrifying one. 2 weeks went by before Daniel made a decision about Marcus. 2 weeks of Emma asking why her new uncle hadn't come to visit. 2 weeks of Ava gently suggesting he at least consider it. 2 weeks of Daniel lying awake at night trying to figure out what the right thing to do was. The problem was, there wasn't a right thing. There was just a choice, and every choice came with consequences he couldn't predict. On a Wednesday afternoon, Daniel finally called Marcus back. I'll let you see her, he said without preamble. But we're doing this my way. Okay. Marcus's voice was careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. What does that mean? It means you don't just show up. It means we set a time, a place, and I'm there the whole time. It means if Emma gets uncomfortable or doesn't want to be around you, we leave. No arguments. I understand. And it means you don't make promises you can't keep. If you're going to be in her life, you're all in. No disappearing acts. I won't disappear. You did before. I know, and I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm just asking you to let me prove I've changed. Daniel closed his eyes. Saturday, 2 o'clock. The park near my building. You get 1 hour. Thank you, Daniel. I mean it. Don't thank me yet. You haven't earned it. He hung up before Marcus could respond and sat there staring at his phone, wondering if he'd just made a massive mistake. When Saturday came, Daniel was on edge from the moment he woke up. Emma could sense it, the way kids always could, and she kept asking him if he was okay. I'm fine, sweetheart. You don't look fine. Well, I am. Emma didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. They got ready slowly, Daniel checking the time every 5 minutes, even though they had plenty of it. Ava had offered to come along for support, but Daniel had told her no. This was something he needed to do on his own. At 1:50, they left the apartment and walked to the park. Marcus was already there, sitting on the same bench where he'd talked to Emma 2 weeks ago. He stood up when he saw them, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Hey," he said. "Hey." Daniel's voice was flat. He turned to Emma. "Remember Uncle Marcus?" Emma nodded, suddenly shy. She pressed herself against Daniel's leg. Marcus crouched down, giving her space. "Hi, Emma. It's good to see you again." "Hi. I brought you something." He pulled a small wrapped package from his jacket. "Is it okay if I give this to you?" Emma looked up at Daniel. He nodded. She took the package carefully and unwrapped it. Inside was a children's book, Where the Wild Things Are. Emma's eyes lit up. "I love this book." "Yeah? I used to read it to your mom when she was little." Emma's face scrunched up in confusion. "My mom?" Daniel's chest tightened. Marcus glanced at him, uncertain. "Your mom was Uncle Marcus's sister," Daniel said quietly. "They grew up together." "Oh." Emma looked down at the book, her small fingers tracing the cover. "Did she like it?" "She loved it," Marcus said, his voice rough. "She made me read it to her every night for about 6 months straight. I had it memorized." "Can you still remember it?" "Most of it, yeah." "Will you read it to me?" Marcus's eyes went bright. He looked at Daniel, who gave a small nod. "I'd love to," Marcus said. They sat down on the bench together, Emma in the middle, Marcus on one side, Daniel on the other. Marcus opened the book and started reading, his voice steady despite the emotion Daniel could see working in his jaw. Emma leaned against him, listening intently, and Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. This was what Emma deserved. Family. Connection. People who loved her, even if it scared him. After Marcus finished reading, Emma wanted to go to the playground. Daniel stayed on the bench while Marcus followed her, pushing her on the swings and catching her at the bottom of the slide. Watching them together was surreal. Marcus was good with her, patient, attentive, genuinely engaged. Nothing like the angry, broken man who'd blamed Daniel for Claire's death. People changed, Daniel thought. Or maybe they just found their way back to who they were before grief had twisted them into something else. When the hour was up, Emma didn't want to leave. "Can Uncle Marcus come home with us?" she asked. "Not today, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Because we agreed on 1 hour, but maybe he can visit again soon." Emma turned to Marcus. "Will you come back?" "If your dad says it's okay, I'll come back as often as you want." "Promise?" Marcus looked at Daniel, and Daniel saw the question there. He hesitated, then nodded once. "I promise," Marcus said. They said their goodbyes, and Emma hugged Marcus before skipping off toward the park exit. Daniel hung back. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for giving me this chance. Don't make me regret it." "I won't." Daniel studied him for a moment. "She deserves to know about Claire. Not just the version I tell her, but the version you remember, the real her." "I know. So when you come back, if you come back, bring stories, bring pictures. Help me give her something I can't give her on my own." Marcus's throat worked. "I will." Daniel nodded and turned to follow Emma, who was already halfway to the street. "Daniel!" Marcus called after him. He stopped, but didn't turn around. "She's lucky to have you." Daniel didn't respond. He just kept walking. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ava came over. She'd brought wine and takeout from the Thai place down the street, and they sat on the couch eating pad Thai straight from the containers. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped." "What does that mean?" Daniel set his container down and rubbed his face. "It means I watched my daughter bond with someone who abandoned us, and I didn't know how to feel about it." "You feel conflicted. I feel like I'm betraying Claire by letting him back in, like I'm saying what he did was okay." Ava set her own container aside and shifted to face him. "You're not saying it was okay. You're saying people deserve second chances." "Do they?" "I think so. Don't you?" Daniel thought about that, about all the ways he'd failed over the past 6 years, all the times he'd been too tired, too distracted, too scared to be the father Emma deserved. If people didn't deserve second chances, where did that leave him? "I don't know," he said finally. "That's honest, at least." They sat in silence for a while, the TV playing low in the background. Daniel leaned his head back against the couch and closed his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Why are you here?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, why are you with me? You're 26. You could be with someone who doesn't have all this baggage. Someone who could actually give you a normal relationship." Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't want normal." "Why not?" "Because normal is boring. Normal is safe. Normal is two people who don't challenge each other pretending everything is fine." She shifted closer to him. "You're not normal, Daniel. You're complicated and scared and you overthink everything. But you're also the most genuine person I've ever met. You don't hide who you are. You don't pretend things are okay when they're not. And you love your daughter so much it actually hurts to watch sometimes." Daniel opened his eyes and looked at her. "That doesn't sound like a compliment." "It is. Because most people are too afraid to love like that. Too afraid to let themselves be vulnerable. But you do it every single day." "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You could have shut down after Claire died. You could have given Emma to her grandparents or your brother and walked away. But you didn't. You stayed. You fought. And that's why I'm here." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I don't know what to say to that." "You don't have to say anything." She leaned in and kissed him, slow and soft, and Daniel let himself sink into it. Let himself stop thinking for once and just feel. When they pulled apart, Ava rested her forehead against his. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "I know you're waiting for me to leave. I know you think I'm going to wake up one day and realize this is too much, but I'm not. So you can stop waiting for it. How do you know what I'm thinking?" "Because I know you." And the scary part was, she did, better than anyone had in a long time. The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. Marcus started coming by every Saturday afternoon, sometimes bringing books, sometimes bringing stories about Claire. Emma absorbed it all like a sponge, asking questions Daniel didn't always know how to answer. Did Mommy like ice cream? She loved it. Mint chocolate chip was her favorite. That's my favorite too. Marcus would smile at that, and Daniel would feel that complicated knot in his chest tighten a little more. Ava became a fixture in their lives too. She had dinner with them twice a week, helped Emma with a school project about butterflies, taught her how to braid hair. Emma started calling her My Ava, which made Daniel's heart do complicated things. One evening, about a month after Marcus had come back into their lives, Daniel was putting Emma to bed when she asked him a question that stopped him cold. "Daddy, is Ava going to be my new mom?" Daniel sat down on the edge of her bed, his mind racing. "What makes you ask that?" "Because she's here a lot, and she does mom things." "Like what?" "Like helping me with my hair and reading to me and making you smile." Daniel's chest felt tight. "Would you want her to be?" Emma thought about it seriously, her little face scrunched up in concentration. "I don't know, I like her a lot, but I already have a mom, even if she's not here." "You do, and nothing will ever change that." "So can I have two?" The question was so simple, so innocent, that Daniel didn't know how to answer it. Because the truth was, he didn't know. He didn't know if what he had with Ava was heading towards something permanent. He didn't know if he was ready for it to be. He didn't know if he'd ever be ready. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said honestly. "But Ava will always be special to us, no matter what. Okay?" "Okay." Emma yawned, her eyes already drooping. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, but he stood in the doorway for a long moment after, watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so unburdened by all the complicated adult emotions swirling around her. He wanted to keep her that way, safe, protected, happy. But he was starting to realize that protecting her didn't mean keeping everything at a distance. It meant giving her room to grow, to love, to build connections, even if it terrified him. The next Saturday, Marcus brought a photo album. He and Emma sat on the living room floor going through it page by page while Daniel watched from the couch. Ava was there too, sitting beside him with her hand resting on his knee. "That's your mom when she was 8, Marcus said, pointing to a picture of a gap-toothed girl with wild curly hair. She'd just lost her 2 front teeth. Emma giggled. "She looks funny." She thought so too, wouldn't smile in pictures for months. "What's this one?" "That's her 16th birthday. See that cake?" She made it herself and it collapsed in the middle. She cried for an hour. "Did you eat it anyway?" We had to. She would have killed us if we didn't. Emma laughed, and the sound filled the room with a lightness Daniel hadn't felt in years. Later, after Marcus had left and Emma was in bed, Daniel and Ava sat on the couch again. She'd started keeping a drawer at his place. Just some clothes and toiletries, nothing major, but it felt significant anyway, like she was carving out space in his life, piece by piece. "That was nice today," Ava said. "With Marcus." "Yeah." "You're doing a good thing, letting him be part of Emma's life." "I hope so." "You are." She squeezed his hand. "I can see how much it means to him, and to her." Daniel nodded, but his mind was somewhere else, on the question Emma had asked him the night before. "Is Ava going to be my new mom?" "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Always." "Where do you see this going?" Ava tilted her head. "This?" "Us." She was quiet for a moment, and Daniel felt his pulse quicken. Maybe he shouldn't have asked. Maybe he'd just opened a door he wasn't ready to walk through. "I see it going wherever we want it to go," Ava said finally. "I'm not in a rush, Daniel. I'm happy with where we are right now. But eventually we'll figure it out. Together. But there's no timeline, no pressure. We move at whatever pace feels right. And if I don't know what feels right, then we wait until you do." Daniel looked at her, at the calm certainty in her face, and felt something loosen in his chest. She wasn't pushing him. Wasn't demanding answers he didn't have. She was just there, steady and patient, waiting for him to catch up. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Stop saying that." "It's true." "No, it's not. You keep acting like you're some broken thing that needs fixing. But you're not broken, Daniel. You're just scared, and that's okay. But it doesn't make you less worthy of love." He wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that he could have this, her, Emma, a life that felt full instead of hollow, without it all falling apart. But fear was a hard thing to shake. A few days later, Daniel got a call from Emma's preschool. She'd gotten into a fight with another kid, something about a toy, and the teacher wanted him to come pick her up. When he arrived, Emma was sitting in the office with her arms crossed and her face set in a stubborn scowl. The other kid, a boy named Tyler, was crying in the corner. "What happened?" Daniel asked. The teacher, a woman named Miss Rodriguez, sighed. "Tyler took Emma's toy during playtime. Emma asked for it back. He refused. She pushed him." Daniel looked at Emma. "Is that true?" Emma's jaw set tighter. "He wasn't playing with it right. That doesn't mean you get to push him. But he took it." "Emma." She looked down at her lap, her lower lip trembling. Daniel felt his frustration war with sympathy. She was 5. She didn't understand yet that the world didn't always play fair. He apologized to Miss Rodriguez and Tyler's mom, then took Emma home. The whole walk back she was silent, her little hand gripping his tightly. When they got inside, he sat her down at the kitchen table. "You know pushing isn't okay, right?" Emma nodded, not looking at him. "So why did you do it?" "Because he made me mad." "I get that, but you can't push people just because they make you mad." "Why not?" "Because it's not how we solve problems." "But you said to stand up for myself." Daniel paused. She was right. He had said that. He told her not to let people walk all over her, to be strong, to fight back when she needed to. But he hadn't explained the nuance, hadn't taught her the difference between standing up for yourself and lashing out. "Standing up for yourself means using your words," he said carefully. "It means telling someone when they're being unfair. It doesn't mean hurting them. But what if they don't listen? Then you get a grown-up to help." Emma's face crumpled. "I'm sorry, Daddy." "I know, sweetheart, but you need to apologize to Tyler, too." "Okay." He pulled her into a hug, and she buried her face in his chest. He could feel her little body shaking, and it broke his heart. "You're not a bad kid," he said softly. "You just made a mistake. And we all make mistakes. Even you. Especially me." That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel called Ava. "I think I'm screwing this up," he said. "Screwing what up?" "Parenting. Emma got in a fight today." "Kids get in fights. It's normal." "I know, but I didn't handle it right. I told her to stand up for herself, and now she thinks that means pushing people." "So you'll clarify. You'll teach her the difference. That's what parents do." "But what if I keep messing up? What if I keep teaching her the wrong things?" "Then you'll keep correcting yourself." Daniel, no one gets parenting right all the time. You're doing the best you can, and that's enough. Is it? Yes. He wanted to believe her, but the fear was still there, gnawing at him. The fear that he wasn't enough, that he'd never be enough. Can you come over? He asked. Right now? Yeah. I'll be there in 10. She showed up 9 minutes later, still in her pajamas with a jacket thrown over them. Daniel let her in, and she wrapped her arms around him without saying a word. They stood there in the doorway for a long time, just holding each other. I'm tired, Daniel said finally. I know. I'm tired of being scared all the time. Tired of feeling like I'm one wrong move away from losing everything. You're not going to lose everything. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. He pulled back and looked at her. How do you do that? How do you just believe things will work out? Because the alternative is spending my whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that's no way to live. Daniel thought about that, about the way he'd been living for the past 6 years, always braced for impact, always waiting for the next disaster. It was exhausting. Maybe it was time to stop waiting. I want to try, he said. Try what? To stop being so scared, to trust that this, us, Emma, all of it, can actually work. Ava smiled. That's all I'm asking. She stayed that night, curled up beside him in bed. Daniel lay awake for a long time after she'd fallen asleep, listening to her breathing, feeling the warmth of her body against his. For the first time in as long as he could remember, he didn't feel alone. And maybe that was enough. The shift happened slowly, so gradually that Daniel didn't notice it at first. Ava started staying over more nights than not. Her toothbrush appeared in the bathroom holder next to his and Emma's. Her books accumulated on the coffee table. Emma stopped asking when Ava was coming over and started assuming she would be there. It felt natural, too natural. And that scared Daniel more than he wanted to admit. It was a Thursday evening when things came to a head. Daniel was working late, trying to fix a server issue that should have been resolved hours ago when Emma came padding into his makeshift office, really just the corner of the living room with a desk shoved against the wall. Daddy, I'm hungry. He glanced at the clock, 7:15. He'd completely lost track of time. Did Ava not make you dinner? She's not here. Daniel's hand stilled on the keyboard. What do you mean she's not here? She had to work late. She texted you. He grabbed his phone and saw 3 missed messages from Ava, sent over an hour ago. Stuck at the bookstore. Inventory crisis. Can you handle dinner tonight? Daniel? I'm guessing you're in the zone. I'll try to be there by 8. Damn it, he muttered. That's a bad word. I know, sorry. He saved his work and stood up. Come on, let's get you fed. They went to the kitchen where Daniel opened the fridge and stared at its contents like they might spontaneously arrange themselves into a meal. Half a carton of eggs, some wilted lettuce, a block of cheese that was probably fine. Probably. How about scrambled eggs, he said. Emma's face fell. Again? What do you mean, again? We had eggs for breakfast. So? So I'm tired of eggs. Daniel felt irritation prick at him. Well, that's what we have. Can't we order pizza? We had pizza on Tuesday. Then can we go to the diner? Emma, I don't have time for this. I need to get back to work. Her lower lip trembled. You're always working. That's not true. Yes, it is. You're always on your computer or on the phone or doing something else. I'm working so I can pay for things, like your preschool and your food and this apartment. I don't care about those things. I just want you to be here. The words hit him like a physical blow. He crouched down so he was at her eye level. I am here, sweetheart. No, you're not. You're thinking about work stuff. I can tell. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Because she was right. Even when he was physically present, his mind was always somewhere else. On the next ticket, the next deadline, the next problem that needed solving. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I've been distracted. Emma threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight. I miss you. I'm right here. I know, but I still miss you. Daniel held her for a long moment, feeling the weight of his failures pressing down on him. He'd been so focused on keeping everything together that he'd forgotten to actually be present, to be there, not just in body, but in mind. How about this? He said, pulling back. I'll close my laptop and we'll make dinner together. Whatever you want. Really? Really? Emma's face lit up. Can we make pancakes? For dinner? Yeah. Daniel laughed despite himself. All right, pancakes it is. They made a mess of the kitchen, flour everywhere, eggshells in the batter, syrup spilled on the counter, but Emma was laughing the whole time, and that made it worth it. When Ava finally showed up at 8:30, she found them both covered in batter, eating pancakes straight off the griddle. I see you survived without me, she said, leaning in the doorway. Barely, Daniel said. Emma ran over and hugged her. We made pancakes for dinner. I can see that. Did you save any for me? Of course, Daddy made extra. They ate together at the kitchen table, Emma chattering about her day while Daniel and Ava exchanged glances. There was something in Ava's eyes he couldn't quite read. Not anger exactly, more like concern. After Emma went to bed, they cleaned up the kitchen in silence. Daniel washed while Ava dried, the familiar rhythm of it almost meditative. She said I'm always working, Daniel said finally. You are. I have to work. Bills don't pay themselves. I know, but there's work, and then there's hiding in work. Daniel set down the dish he was washing. I'm not hiding. Aren't you? He turned to face her. What's that supposed to mean? Ava set down the towel and crossed her arms. It means that every time things start feeling too real, too settled, you bury yourself in your laptop. You find some crisis that needs your immediate attention. You make yourself unavailable. That's not fair. Isn't it? Daniel, I've been staying here almost every night for 2 months. We've never once talked about what that means. About where this is going. I thought you said there was no timeline. There isn't. But there's a difference between taking things slow and actively avoiding the conversation. Daniel felt his defenses go up. I'm not avoiding anything. Then talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're afraid of. I'm not. Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't lie to me. I know you're scared. I've known from the beginning, but I can't keep waiting for you to decide if you actually want me here. Of course I want you here. Do you? Because sometimes it feels like you're just tolerating me, like I'm something that happened to you instead of something you chose. Daniel's chest tightened. That's not true. Then what is true? Because I'm standing here trying to figure out if I'm building a life with you or just filling time until you decide I'm too much trouble. You're not too much trouble. Then what am I? The question hung between them, heavy and unavoidable. Daniel wanted to say the right thing. Wanted to tell her that she was everything he needed, everything he wanted, everything he'd been afraid to hope for. But the words stuck in his throat. Because the truth was, he didn't know what she was. Or maybe he did, and he was too scared to admit it. I love you, he said finally. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. Loving me isn't the same as letting me in. I have let you in. Have you? Because it still feels like there's a wall between us. Like you're keeping part of yourself locked away where I can't reach it. Daniel turned back to the sink. I don't know how to do this, Ava. I don't know how to be someone's partner. I've been doing this alone for so long that I don't know how to share the load. So let me help you learn. What if I can't? Then we'll figure it out together, but you have to want to try. He gripped the edge of the counter. I do want to try. I'm just scared. I know. You've said that before. But at some point, Daniel, you have to decide if you're going to let fear run your life or if you're going to push through it. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. He turned to look at her, frustration boiling over. You don't get it. You don't know what it's like to lose someone you love. To watch them die and know you couldn't do anything to stop it. You don't know what it's like to lie awake at night terrified that it's going to happen again. Ava's expression softened. You're right. I don't know what that's like. But I know what it's like to love someone who won't let themselves be loved. And I can't keep doing this if you're not willing to meet me halfway. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to know if you're all in or not. Because I am. I'm all in, Daniel. I love you. I love Emma. I love the life we're building. But I can't be the only one fighting for it. Daniel felt panic rise in his chest. I'm not asking you to fight alone. Then show me. Stop hiding behind your work and your fear and your guilt about Claire. Show me that you want this as much as I do. I do want this. Then prove it. She walked out of the kitchen, leaving Daniel standing there alone. He heard the bedroom door close, not slammed, but firmly shut, and the sound of it felt final. He stood there for a long time, staring at the soapy water in the sink, his mind racing. She was right. He knew she was right. He'd been keeping her at arm's length, letting her in just enough to feel less alone, but not enough to actually build something real. Because building something real meant risking losing it, and he didn't know if he could survive that again. But as he stood there in his quiet kitchen, he realized something else. He was already losing her. Not to death or tragedy, but to his own fear. And that was somehow worse. Because this time, it would be his fault. The next morning, Daniel woke up to find Ava already gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, had to open the bookstore. We'll talk later. No, love you. No, see you tonight. Just a statement of fact. Emma noticed immediately that something was off. Where's Ava? She asked over breakfast. She had to work. Is she coming back later? I don't know, sweetheart. Emma's face scrunched up. Why not? Because we had a fight. About what? Grown-up stuff. Are you going to say sorry? Daniel looked at his daughter, at her earnest 5-year-old face, and felt something crack in his chest. Yeah, I am. Good, because I don't want her to leave. Me neither. After he dropped Emma off at preschool, Daniel drove to the bookstore. It was a small, independent place called Chapter and Verse, tucked between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing store. He'd only been inside a handful of times, usually to pick Ava up, but he knew she loved it. Loved the smell of old paper and the quiet rustle of people browsing. The bell above the door chimed when he walked in. Ava was behind the counter helping a customer, but she looked up when she heard it. Their eyes met and something passed between them. Not anger, just exhaustion. He waited while she finished with the customer, pretending to browse the fiction section. When the store was finally empty, she came over to him. You didn't have to come here, she said. Yeah, I did. She crossed her arms. Daniel, I'm sorry, he said, cutting her off. You were right about all of it. I've been hiding. I've been keeping you at a distance because I'm terrified of losing you. But in doing that, I'm losing you anyway, and I don't want that. Ava's expression softened slightly. I don't want that either. So tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. You can't fix it, Daniel. That's the problem. You keep thinking this is something you can solve, like one of your server issues. But relationships don't work that way. They're messy and complicated, and you can't control them. I know that. Do you? Because every time something gets hard, you retreat. You pull back. You try to manage the situation instead of just being in it. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how to just be in it. Then learn. I can't teach you. You have to figure it out yourself. What if I can't? Then we don't work. And that will break my heart. But I'll survive it. She looked at him steadily. The question is, can you? Daniel thought about that, about what his life would look like without Ava in it, without her laugh, her patience, her steady presence, without watching her braid Emma's hair or listening to her read bedtime stories in funny voices or feeling her warmth beside him in bed. The thought of it made him physically ache. No, he said quietly, I can't. Then stop acting like you can. They stood there in the quiet bookstore, surrounded by thousands of stories about people who'd faced impossible choices and found ways through them. Daniel wished one of those stories could tell him what to do, but life didn't work that way. I want to be all in, he said. I want to stop being scared, I just don't know how. You start by being honest. With me, with yourself, with Emma. You stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. You stop trying to protect everyone from your feelings. What if my feelings are too much? They're not. Daniel, you think you're this burden that people have to carry, but you're not. You're just a person who's been through something hard, and that's okay. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I don't want to lose you. Then don't push me away. I'm trying not to. Try harder. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't reassuring, but it was honest, and Daniel found himself grateful for that. Because he was tired of people handling him with kid gloves, tired of being treated like he might break. Okay, he said. Okay. I'll try harder. I'll stop retreating. He paused, searching for the right words. I'll let you in. All the way. No more walls. Ava studied him for a long moment. You mean that? Yeah, I do. She stepped closer and took his hand. This is going to be hard. Harder than you think. I know. And you're going to want to run. Probably more than once. I know that too. And when you do, I need you to tell me. I need you to talk to me instead of disappearing into your work. I can do that. Can you? Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm going to try. That's all I can promise, but I'm going to try. Ava searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have been enough, because she nodded. Okay. Okay? Yeah, okay. She leaned in and kissed him, soft and brief, and Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. It wasn't fixed. Nothing was fixed, but it was a start. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Daniel sat down with Ava on the couch. He'd been thinking about what she'd said all day, turning it over in his mind. I want to tell you something, he said. All right. The night Claire died, I was angry at her. Ava's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. She'd been up 3 times already with Emma. I'd offered to take over, but she insisted on doing it herself, said she wanted to breastfeed, that it was important, but she was exhausted. I could see it, and I was angry that she wouldn't just let me help. His voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat. The last thing I said to her was that she was being stubborn, that she needed to let go and trust me, and then she went to the bathroom. And He stopped, unable to finish. Ava took his hand. I've spent 6 years hating myself for that, Daniel continued, for being angry, for not seeing the signs, for not forcing her to go to the doctor earlier in the pregnancy when she said she was feeling off. Daniel, you couldn't have known. But what if I could have? What if I'd paid more attention? What if I'd insisted she see someone? Then maybe nothing would have changed. Pulmonary embolisms are unpredictable. You know that. Knowing it doesn't make it easier. I know. Daniel looked down at their joined hands. I think part of me has been punishing myself, keeping everyone at a distance because I don't deserve to be happy, because Claire didn't get to be. That's not fair to you, or to her. I know, but I don't know how to stop. Ava shifted closer, her shoulder pressing against his. You stop by forgiving yourself, by accepting that you did the best you could with what you knew, by letting yourself be human. I don't know if I can. You can. It just takes time. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of Daniel's confession hanging between them. It felt strange to have said it out loud, like he'd opened a wound that had been festering for years, but it also felt necessary. Thank you, Ava said finally. For what? For telling me. For trusting me with that. You asked me to let you in. I did, and you did. Daniel leaned his head back against the couch. This is hard. I told you it would be. Yeah, you did. But we're doing it together. That makes it easier. Daniel turned to look at her. Does it? Yeah, it does. And looking at her face, at the calm certainty there, Daniel thought maybe she was right. Maybe it did. The following Saturday, Marcus came by as usual, but this time Daniel had something to ask him. They were sitting on a bench at the park while Emma played, watching her climb the jungle gym with reckless abandon. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Sure. How did you get past it? The anger, the guilt? All of it. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I don't know if I have, not completely, but I stopped blaming myself for not being able to save her. How? Therapy mostly. Took me 3 years to actually go, but it helped. Talking to someone who didn't know Claire, who didn't have skin in the game, they helped me see that I wasn't responsible for her death just because I couldn't prevent it. Did you believe them? Not at first, but eventually, yeah. Daniel watched Emma slide down the slide, her laughter carrying across the playground. I don't know if I can do that. Let go of the guilt. You don't have to let go of it completely. You just have to stop letting it run your life. Is that what I'm doing? Marcus gave him a long look. Yeah, man, that's exactly what you're doing. Daniel nodded slowly. Ava said something similar. She sounds smart. She is. You love her? Yeah. Does she love you? She says she does. Then don't screw it up. Daniel laughed despite himself. That's your advice? That's my advice. Claire would have wanted you to be happy. You know that, right? Daniel felt his throat tighten. I don't know. Well, I do. She loved you, And she would have hated seeing you like this, stuck, afraid, punishing yourself. She would have told you to get your head out of your ass and live your life. Yeah, she probably would have. So do it. Not for me, not for Ava, for yourself. And for Emma. Daniel looked over at his daughter, who was now showing another kid how to do the monkey bars. She was so fearless, so unburdened by the weight of the past. He wanted to be more like that, wanted to move through the world without constantly bracing for impact. I'm trying, he said. I know you are, but try harder. It was the second time in a week someone had said that to him, and maybe that meant something. That night, after Emma was asleep and Ava was curled up beside him reading, Daniel made a decision. I think I need to talk to someone, he said. Ava looked up from her book. What do you mean? A therapist, someone who can help me work through all of this. She set her book down. I think that's a really good idea. You do? Yeah. I've actually been thinking about suggesting it, but I didn't want to push. You should have pushed. Maybe, but you needed to get there on your own. Daniel nodded. Will you help me find someone? Of course. She leaned over and kissed him, and Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just for the future, but for himself. Because maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry all of this alone. Maybe he could let people help him. Maybe he could let himself heal. And maybe that was the first step toward actually being present. Actually being the father Emma deserved. The partner Ava deserved. The person he wanted to be. Finding a therapist turned out to be harder than Daniel expected. The first one Ava helped him research had a 3-month waiting list. The second didn't take his insurance. The third had an opening but was located 40 minutes away, which felt impossible with Emma's schedule. He was starting to think it was a sign that maybe he didn't really need therapy, that he could just keep managing on his own. When Ava found Dr. Sarah Chen, her office was 20 minutes away, she had evening appointments, and she specialized in grief and trauma. Daniel made the call on a Tuesday morning while Emma was at preschool. His hands shook while he dialed. This is Daniel Reeves, he said when the receptionist answered. I'd like to make an appointment. Of course. Can I ask what you're looking to address in therapy? Daniel hesitated. How did you summarize 6 years of grief, fear, and barely holding it together into a sentence? Loss, he said finally. I lost my partner 6 years ago, and I don't think I ever dealt with it properly. I'm sorry for your loss. Dr. Chen has an opening Thursday at 7. Does that work? Yeah, that works. He hung up and sat there staring at his phone, feeling like he'd just done something irreversible. Like he'd admitted out loud that he wasn't okay, and now there was no taking it back. When Thursday came, Daniel almost canceled 3 times. He sat in his car outside Dr. Chen's office for 10 minutes, his hand on the door handle, trying to convince himself to go inside. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. You've got this. I'm proud of you. He took a breath and got out of the car. Dr. Chen's office was smaller than he expected, with soft lighting and a couch that looked more comfortable than professional. She was in her early 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a bun and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. Daniel, she said, shaking his hand. Thanks for coming in. Have a seat wherever you're comfortable. He sat in the chair across from her, not the couch. The couch felt too vulnerable. So, Dr. Chen said, settling into her own chair with a notepad, tell me what brought you here. Daniel had rehearsed this in his head a dozen times, but now that he was actually here, the words felt stuck. I don't really know where to start, he admitted. Start anywhere. There's no wrong answer. So he started with Claire, with the night she died and the 6 years that followed, with Emma and the fear that he was failing her, with Ava and how terrified he was of losing her too. Dr. Chen listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting something down, but mostly just present, nodding at the right moments. When he finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a moment. That's a lot to carry, she said. Yeah. How long have you been carrying it alone? The whole time. That must be exhausting. Daniel felt something crack in his chest. It is. Do you feel like you're allowed to be tired? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? I mean, do you give yourself permission to be exhausted? Or do you tell yourself you should be stronger, that other people have it worse, that you don't have the luxury of being tired? Daniel stared at her. It was like she'd looked directly into his brain and pulled out the exact thoughts he'd been having for 6 years. The second one, he said quietly. Why? Because Emma needs me. I don't get to be tired. But you are tired. Yeah. So what happens to that tiredness if you don't acknowledge it? Daniel thought about it. I guess it just builds up until I can't function anymore. Exactly. Daniel, grief isn't something you can just power through. It's not a problem to solve or a weakness to overcome. It's a process, and you've been trying to skip the process. I don't have time for a process. You don't have time not to have one. Because what you're doing right now, running on empty, keeping everyone at arm's length, punishing yourself for things that weren't your fault, that's not sustainable. Eventually, something's going to break. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I'm afraid it already has. Then let's start putting the pieces back together. They talked for the full hour. Dr. Chen asked questions that made Daniel uncomfortable, pushed him in ways he wasn't used to being pushed. But by the time the session ended, he felt lighter, not fixed, but less alone. Same time next week? Dr. Chen asked as he was leaving. Yeah, same time. When he got home, Ava and Emma were making cookies. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour on every surface, chocolate chips scattered across the counter, but they were both laughing. Daddy! Emma ran over and hugged his legs, leaving floury handprints on his jeans. We made cookies! I can see that. Ava looked up from the mixing bowl. How did it go? Good. Hard, but good. She smiled. I'm glad. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Ava sat on the couch together. He told her about the session, about what Dr. Chen had said, about how exposed it had made him feel. She said, I've been trying to skip the grief process, he said. Do you think she's right? Yeah, I do. I thought if I just kept moving forward, kept focusing on Emma, eventually the grief would just go away, but it doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't. Daniel leaned his head back against the couch. I don't know how to do this, how to actually process it. You don't have to know right now. You just have to keep showing up, to therapy, to me, to yourself. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also necessary. Daniel turned to look at her. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, for pushing me to do this. Ava took his hand. I'm not going anywhere, Daniel. I told you that. I know. I'm starting to believe it. Over the following weeks, Daniel fell into a new rhythm. Therapy every Thursday evening, family dinners on Tuesdays and Sundays, Marcus visiting on Saturdays, Ava staying over most nights, her presence becoming less like an intrusion and more like a natural part of their lives. Emma flourished. She was doing better in preschool, making friends, coming home with stories that actually made sense instead of the scattered nonsense she used to tell. She'd stopped asking why Daddy looked sad all the time. And Daniel was changing too. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, but changing nonetheless. He started putting his laptop away at 6 every night. Started actually listening when Emma talked instead of just nodding absently. Started letting Ava help with things instead of insisting he could handle everything himself. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the old fears crept back in, when he woke up in a cold sweat convinced something terrible was about to happen. But instead of lying there alone, spiraling, he'd wake Ava up and talk to her. And she'd listen and remind him that fear was just a feeling, not a premonition. 3 months into therapy, Dr. Chen asked him a question that stopped him cold. What would Claire think of your life right now? Daniel sat there, unable to answer. I don't know, he said finally. If she could see you, with Emma, with Ava, with the life you've built, what do you think she'd say? Daniel closed his eyes. He could see Claire so clearly in his mind, the way she'd looked at him when she was happy, eyebrows raised, mouth curved in that knowing smile. She'd tell me I was being an idiot, he said. Dr. Chen smiled. Why? Because I've spent 6 years acting like loving someone else would dishonor her memory, and she'd hate that. She'd hate that I've been so stuck. What else would she say? Daniel thought about it, really thought about it. She'd say Emma is lucky to have me, even though I don't always believe it. Do you believe it now? Sometimes, more than I used to. That's progress. Is it? Yes. Daniel, progress isn't linear. Some days you'll feel like you're moving forward. Some days you'll feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. The important thing is that you keep showing up. Daniel nodded. He was starting to understand that, starting to accept that healing wasn't about reaching some finish line where everything was fixed. It was about doing the work, day after day, even when it was hard. One Saturday afternoon in early spring, something shifted. Daniel was at the park with Emma, Ava, and Marcus. They'd started doing this, all of them together, and it had stopped feeling weird. It just felt like family. Emma was on the swings, Marcus pushing her while she shrieked with laughter. Ava sat beside Daniel on a bench, her hand in his. "She's happy," Ava said. "Yeah, she is." "So are you." Daniel looked at her. "What makes you say that?" "I can see it. In the way you smile. In the way you're actually present, instead of being somewhere else in your head." Dr. Chen would say that's progress. It is progress. Daniel watched his daughter flying high on the swing, her face bright with joy. And he realized something. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not the way he used to be. The fear was still there. It probably always would be. But it didn't control him. Didn't dictate his choices. "I want to ask you something," he said. Ava turned to face him. "Okay. Will you move in with us? Officially, I mean, not just staying over most nights, but actually living here." Ava's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, I'm serious. Emma loves you. I love you. And I'm tired of pretending this is temporary when it doesn't feel temporary." "What does it feel like?" "Permanent, in the best possible way." Ava smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made everything else disappear. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes. I'll move in with you." Daniel pulled her close and kissed her, right there in the middle of the park, not caring who saw. When they broke apart, Emma was running toward them, Marcus trailing behind. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, giggling. "I just asked Ava to move in with us," Daniel said. Emma's face lit up. "Really? Really? Does that mean she'll be here every morning when I wake up?" "Yep." Emma threw her arms around Ava. "This is the best day ever." Marcus stood off to the side, watching them with a complicated expression. Daniel caught his eye. "You good?" Daniel asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, I'm good. Claire would have loved this." "You think?" "I know. She always wanted you to be happy, and you are. Finally." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, I am." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Ava lay in bed together. She was already half asleep, her breathing deep and even, but Daniel was wide awake. He thought about the past 6 years, about all the ways he'd been broken and all the ways he'd slowly put himself back together, about Claire and the life they'd had and the life he was building now. He'd spent so long believing that moving forward meant leaving her behind. But he understood now that wasn't true. Claire would always be part of him, part of Emma, part of their story. But she didn't have to be the end of the story. She could just be a chapter, a beautiful, painful, important chapter that had shaped who he was, but didn't define who he'd become. Ava stirred beside him, her hand finding his in the dark. "You're thinking too loud," she mumbled. "Sorry. What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Yeah? Yeah, I spent so long being afraid of losing you that I forgot to appreciate having you. You appreciate me now?" "Every day." She smiled sleepily and closed her eyes again. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." "I know." And for the first time in 6 years, he actually believed it. The weeks that followed were a blur of boxes and furniture rearranging, and Emma insisting that Ava's books needed to go on the shelf next to hers. They turned the spare room, which had been Daniel's office, into a proper shared workspace. Ava brought her plants, her favorite reading chair, her collection of vintage teacups. The apartment that had felt like a holding pattern, a place where Daniel was just surviving until the next crisis, started to feel like a home. One night, about a month after Ava had officially moved in, Daniel was reading to Emma before bed. They were halfway through Charlotte's Web, which Emma had declared her new favorite. "Daddy?" she said when he finished the chapter. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to marry Ava?" Daniel's hand stilled on the page. "What makes you ask that?" "Because she lives with us now. And I heard Uncle Marcus say that people who love each other get married." "Did he now?" "Yeah, so are you." Daniel looked down at his daughter, at her expectant face, and realized he didn't have a good answer. Not because he didn't want to marry Ava, but because he hadn't let himself think that far ahead. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Would you want me to?" Emma thought about it seriously. "I think so. Then she'd really be part of our family." "She's already part of our family." "But it would be more official." Daniel laughed. "Where did you learn the word official?" "Uncle Marcus?" "He's teaching you big words, huh?" "Yep. So are you going to?" "I'll think about it, but right now we're just happy the way things are. Okay?" "Okay," Emma yawned. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweetheart." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, but her question stayed with him long after she'd fallen asleep. Later that night, he brought it up with Ava. "Emma asked me if I was going to marry you," he said. Ava looked up from her book. "She did?" "Yeah, apparently Marcus put the idea in her head." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd think about it." Ava set her book down. "And are you thinking about it?" Daniel sat down beside her. "Yeah, I am. I mean, I know it's fast. We've only been officially living together for a month, but it doesn't feel fast. It feels right." "So what's stopping you?" "Fear, I guess. The same fear that's been stopping me from everything. What if I'm not ready? What if I screw it up?" Ava took his hand. "Daniel, you're never going to feel completely ready. That's not how life works. But the question isn't whether you're ready. It's whether you want to." "I do want to." "Then that's your answer." Daniel looked at her, at the calm certainty in her face, and felt the last piece of resistance crumble. "Will you marry me?" he asked. Ava blinked. "Are you seriously asking me right now?" "Yeah, I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this, but I'm asking anyway. Will you marry me?" She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "Yes, of course, yes." He pulled her close and kissed her, and it felt like coming home. They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. She screamed so loud that Mrs. Callahan came running from next door to make sure everything was okay. "Ava's going to be my new mom," Emma announced to anyone who would listen. "Stepmom," Ava corrected gently. "You already have a mom, but I'll be your stepmom, and I'll love you just as much." Emma threw her arms around Ava. "I love you too." Daniel watched them together, his daughter and the woman who'd somehow broken through all his defenses, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just happiness, not just contentment, but actual, genuine peace. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the park where they'd first talked about letting Marcus back into their lives. Emma was the flower girl, Marcus walked Ava down the aisle, and Daniel's brother Ryan flew in from Denver to be the best man. It was simple and perfect, and nothing like the wedding Daniel had imagined having with Claire all those years ago. But that was okay, because this wasn't about replacing what he'd lost. It was about building something new. When the officiant asked if he had anything he wanted to say, Daniel looked at Ava and felt the words come easily. "I spent a long time being afraid," he said. "Afraid of losing people, afraid of being happy, afraid of moving forward. But you taught me that fear doesn't have to be the thing that drives my life, that I can be scared and still choose to love, that I can honor the past without being trapped by it. So thank you for being patient, for not giving up, for showing me what it means to actually live." There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. Even Marcus was wiping at his face. When Ava said her vows, she kept them short. "I promise to love you and Emma with everything I have. I promise to be patient when you're struggling. I promise to remind you that you're enough, even when you don't believe it. And I promise to build a life with you that's full of joy and laughter and all the messy, complicated, beautiful things that make life worth living." They kissed, and Emma cheered, and for the first time in 6 years, Daniel felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was actually living. The reception was at a small restaurant nearby. Nothing fancy, just good food and good people. Daniel danced with Emma, then with Ava, then watched as Marcus danced with Emma while telling her stories about Claire. Ryan pulled Daniel aside at one point. "You look happy," he said. "I am." "Good, you deserve it." "Do I?" "Yeah, man, you do. Claire would want this for you." Daniel nodded, feeling the familiar ache in his chest. But it didn't hurt the way it used to. It was just there, a reminder of what he'd lost, but also what he'd gained. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home and Emma was asleep at Mrs. Callahan's for the night, Daniel and Ava sat on their apartment balcony. It was small, barely big enough for two chairs, but it had a view of the city lights. "We did it," Ava said. "We did. How do you feel?" Daniel thought about it. Grateful, scared, happy, all of it at once. "That sounds about right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Daniel thought about how far he'd come, from that night in the cafe when he'd almost pushed Ava away, to this moment, married and building a future he'd been too afraid to imagine. "Do you think Emma will remember Claire?" he asked suddenly. "I don't know. She was so young. I want her to. I want her to know who her mother was." "She will. Because you'll tell her. Marcus will tell her. We'll make sure she knows." "What if it's not enough?" "It'll be enough. Daniel, you can't give Emma her mother back, but you can give her stories and pictures and love. You can make sure Claire is part of her life, even though she's not here. And that's what matters." Daniel nodded. She was right. She was always right. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." They sat there until the city lights started to blur, until exhaustion pulled at them both. Then they went inside to the apartment that was now officially theirs, to the life they were building together. And Daniel realized something as he lay in bed that night, Ava curled up beside him. He'd been so afraid of forgetting Claire, of moving on, of betraying her memory. But loving Ava didn't erase Claire. It didn't dishonor what they'd had. It just proved that the human heart was bigger than he'd thought, that you could lose someone and still find joy again, that grief and happiness could exist in the same space, that moving forward didn't mean leaving the past behind. It meant carrying it with you and choosing to keep going anyway. A year later, Daniel stood in the kitchen making pancakes, a Saturday morning tradition now, while Emma set the table. Ava was still asleep, exhausted from a late shift at the bookstore. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" Emma said. "Sure, sweetheart." "Do you still miss my first mom?" Daniel set down the spatula and crouched to her level. "Every day." "Does that make you sad?" "Sometimes, but it also makes me grateful. Because she gave me you, and you're the best thing in my life." Emma thought about that. "I have two moms now." "You do." "That makes me lucky, doesn't it?" Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, sweetheart. That makes you very lucky." Emma hugged him tight, and Daniel closed his eyes, holding his daughter and thinking about how much had changed. How he'd gone from barely surviving to actually thriving. How his carefully controlled, fear-driven life had opened up into something messier and harder, and infinitely better. Marcus came by later that afternoon. He'd been coming around more often, building a real relationship with Emma, and Daniel was grateful for it. Emma deserved to know her mother's family, deserved to have that connection. They all went to the park together, Daniel, Ava, Emma, and Marcus. It was the same park where so much had happened, where Marcus had first apologized, where Daniel had proposed, where they'd gotten married. Emma ran ahead to the playground while the adults followed at a slower pace. "You're doing good, man," Marcus said to Daniel. "With Emma, with everything." "Thanks, I'm trying. Claire would be proud." Daniel looked at him. "You think?" "I know. She always wanted you to be happy. And you are." "Yeah, I am." They watched Emma play, and Daniel thought about all the things he'd learned over the past 2 years. That grief didn't have a timeline, that healing wasn't linear, that loving someone new didn't mean forgetting someone old, that being a good father meant being honest with your child, even when the truth was hard, that letting people in was terrifying but necessary, that happiness wasn't something you earned, it was something you chose over and over, even when it felt impossible. He'd spent so long believing he didn't deserve to move forward. That choosing happiness meant betraying Claire's memory. But he understood now that wasn't true. Claire had loved him, had wanted him to be happy. And honoring her memory didn't mean staying stuck. It meant living fully, loving deeply, and making sure Emma grew up in a home filled with warmth and laughter and connection. That evening, after Marcus had left and Emma was in bed, Daniel and Ava sat on the couch together. It was their spot now, the place where they'd had so many important conversations. "I've been thinking," Daniel said. "About what?" "About how different my life is now compared to 2 years ago." "Different good or different bad?" "Different good. Really good. I was so stuck back then, so convinced that the only way to honor Claire was to suffer, to keep myself separate from everyone, to never let myself be happy. And now? Now I understand that the best way to honor her is to live. to give Emma a childhood full of joy, to build a life that's full and messy and real. Ava smiled. That sounds like something Dr. Chen would say. She'd probably take credit for it. They laughed, and it felt easy, natural, like this was exactly where they were supposed to be. Thank you, Daniel said. For what? For pushing me, for not giving up, for loving me even when I didn't know how to love you back. You knew how. You were just afraid to. I'm not afraid anymore. Good, because I plan on being around for a very long time. Daniel pulled her close and kissed her, and it felt like a promise, like a beginning instead of an end. Because that's what he'd learned. Life wasn't about reaching some perfect state where everything was fixed and nothing hurt. It was about showing up every day and doing the work, about loving people even when it was scary, about building something beautiful out of the broken pieces. He'd lost Claire. He'd always carry that loss. But he'd also found Ava, rebuilt his relationship with Marcus, become the father Emma deserved, and learned how to actually live instead of just survive. And that wasn't betrayal. That was healing. That was growth. That was life. As he sat there with Ava in his arms, listening to the quiet sounds of their home, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just peace or happiness or contentment, though he felt all of those things. He felt whole, not because he'd forgotten the past or stopped grieving, but because he'd learned to carry the grief alongside the joy. To hold space for both Claire's memory and his future with Ava. To be a father who was present and honest and human. He wasn't perfect. He still had days when the fear crept back in, when he worried about losing everything he'd built. But he had tools now. Therapy, Ava, Marcus, a community of people who loved him and Emma. And he had the understanding that being afraid didn't mean he had to let fear win. Down the hall, Emma stirred in her sleep, calling out softly. Daniel started to get up, but Ava put a hand on his arm. I'll go, she said. He watched her walk down the hall, heard her soft voice as she reassured Emma that everything was okay, and he realized this was his life now. Not the one he'd planned, not the one he'd imagined all those years ago with Claire, but a different one, a good one. A life built on love and loss and learning how to keep going. When Ava came back, she curled up beside him again. She was just having a dream, she said. She's fine. Thanks for checking on her. Of course. They sat there in the quiet, and Daniel thought about how far he'd come. From the man who sat alone in a cafe every night, too afraid to let anyone close, to someone who had built a family, who had learned to love again without guilt, who had chosen to live instead of just exist. It hadn't been easy. It had been messy and hard and painful in ways he couldn't have anticipated, but it had been worth it. Because on the other side of all that fear and grief and resistance was this: a home full of laughter, a daughter who felt safe and loved, a partner who saw him, really saw him, and loved him anyway. A future that wasn't defined by what he'd lost, but by what he was building. And that was everything.